Welcome to the Design Icons podcast, where we talk to creative leaders about work, life, and beyond. Design Icons is brought to you by Noun Project, the world's most diverse and extensive collection of icons and photos for every project. Today, we're joined by Mary Kate McDevitt. She's an illustrator, hand letterer, and designer known for her warm, whimsical style, her work with color, and thoughtful typography. Her roster of past clients include well-known brands like Target, Panera, Johnson & Johnson, Nintendo, Nike, New York Times, and AT&T, to name a few. In this episode, we talk about how to build career momentum as an illustrator, how to approach pricing and negotiation with large brands, and reclaiming the art and love of process in a hyper-polished, algorithmic era. Mary Kate joined our call remotely from her beautifully converted barn studio in rural Vermont. Mary Kate, thanks so much for joining and making the time to chat today. Excited to get to know you better.
I'm very excited to be here, and I'm excited to chat.
To kick things off, I'd love to hear your backstory.
You know, it can really go back to childhood, as most artists, I think, do start their career as kids, and then we just stick with it. So growing up as a kid, I was always interested in art. It was always my favorite class. I always liked anything creative. And I was actually talking to my mom about some of my early creative endeavors. And a lot of it was actually around my space and my bedroom, and like changing around my bedroom or changing the color, or hanging art, or finding fun things to just keep my space creative and inspiring to me. And in high school, I was, still into art and taking art classes, and I really didn't even consider art school. So I was applying to colleges, and I applied to a bunch of colleges thinking I'll just I'm sure they'll have some kind of art program, and not really thinking that I should even go to a art school. For financial reasons, I had to go to a state school. It's just so much cheaper. And it was actually my grandmother who told me about Tyler School of Art, which is where I went. It's a part of Temple University. The first semester, I really didn't even think I didn't know what graphic design was. I didn't think of it, consider it as a major. So I went to art school because I like drawing and I like painting. But I took a graphic design class because then I learned about graphic design, and I just loved it. It was really fun to get an assignment and figure out the best way to creatively portray this brand or this poster or however. And I really like the assignment aspect, basically getting a brief and something to work from, rather than, coming up with conceptual art, which a lot of Tyler they were very conceptual driven, and not necessarily like a lot of my friends majored in sculpture. And I would tell my mom oh yes, there's a sculpture major, and I think she's picturing marble busts and chiseling away, but really it's wrapping yourself in tubes and doing some kind of crazy performance, knitting yourself into a cocoon, which was one of the projects I saw, and it really grabbed my attention, and that's what I decided to do. And after school, I worked as a graphic designer, and I was working at a design studio in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I was just so excited to get a job right out of school. And it was at a really cool design studio. They had a bunch of fun projects that I had seen in print magazine and communication arts and stuff. Little did I know that most of the projects you actually work on in design studio, small design studios, are not necessarily the fun projects. And it's just obviously, as an entry-level design, I'm putting in the SKU numbers for flooring catalogs and not the sexy stuff. And the thing is, I'm really not great at the technical design side of things. Like in school, I wanted to play with layouts, adding texture and doing things to kind of mess with the typography or lettering it myself. But it did inspire me to like keep making stuff in my own time. So after work, I would be making posters, screen printing, and illustrating, painting. And I started making things and opened up an Etsy shop. And I came up with some fun product ideas, like thinking like, okay, I'm going to try and create more of a brand, I guess, around this rather than just paintings here and there. So I came up with this product called the Mini Goals Chalkboards. And it was basically a little chalkboard that I lettered some fun phrases like, today I will, and then you fill in what you're going to do. And they were popular. And around that time, blogs were really popular. And so I would email blogs being like, hey, do you want to post my prints and chalkboards? And it got on Design Sponge, Design Work Life, which was such a great blog. I really miss that era, honestly. Illustration Mundo, Drawn Quarterly. It was on that blog, and an editor from Chronicle Books reached out asking if I had any interest in taking the Mini Goals chalkboards and turning it into a notepad. And at this point in my career, I had one illustration job. I was like, this is like a dream client right out of the gate. I was so excited. So it basically gave me the confidence to go freelance. And I was like, well, I have one client under my belt. It's Chronicle Books. And I am out the gate with my number one dream client. So I moved to Portland, Oregon. I figured one big dramatic shift. I kind of, again, going back to my environment and how important it is for my creativity. Lancaster has its charms. And if you don't know Lancaster, it's Amish country. So, I mean, Lancaster has a bunch of cool things about it. It's really beautiful, charming little city. But in terms of a young 20-something, not what I want going on my weekends, which I ended up basically spending most of my weekends going back to Philly. So I moved to Portland, and it just has such a huge creative community there. I think just being surrounded by so many other creatives, kind of also on the same boat. I don't know, like had I moved to New York or something to get into that illustration community and stuff, I think maybe it would have been daunting. In Portland, it just felt so much more accessible. It was just a crowd that I could kind of feel comfortable around. There was just a really welcoming community, and had shows, gallery shows at coffee shops, nothing like I would make art kind of like this one coffee shop show I did. I did a bunch of prints all around coffee, and then those illustrations then turned into a calendar that I worked with Workman Publishing, and that sort of became a thing that also helped build my career, build my portfolio, build clients, was creating something, putting it out there, and somehow it coming back to me. And so I was just on a mission to create as much stuff as possible. And it's like, that's all I wanted to do. I spent all my 20s lettering, illustrating, just kind of getting as much of my work out there in front of people's faces. And I think that's basically what's helped, like the work that I put in 15 years ago is still helping me to this day, because I'm working with an agent now. And I really haven't always worked with agents, because clients were able to find me. Clients were able to reach out to me because I had put so much work out there and able to be recognized by art directors. And so now working with an agent, she was telling me like she'll reach out to potential clients and they'll say, oh, I've been wanting to work with Mary Kate for like 10 years and we actually finally have a project or something. And I'm just like, wow, that's so cool that people remember me from, or just like have kept me in mind. Whether or not they've worked with me yet, I don't hold that against them, but I'm always open for new projects. Anyone who's listening.
I love it's not audacity, but like you get the one client, you're like, I'm going for this, like all in.
Yes.
That's such a cool story. And I think too, like realizing that the work you put in early does pay off later on in the career. Like that's such a key point, because I think a lot of folks struggle early in their career and they don't realize that stuff it's a snowball rolling up the hill still. So
Absolutely.
Looking back to where you started, what do you think has changed the most about illustration and lettering? What do you think hasn't changed at all?
Oh, there's been so many changes in the industry and like what's fashionable. Also, the what we use to actually create is so much different from how I started. So when I started, I did everything on paper, scanned it in, digitized it that way. And it's funny, like my first Skillshare class, I did in 2013, and it was all with my completely old process, which includes a scanner, but it like now so many people use iPads, and now I use an iPad time to time, but I use a Cintiq mostly. So I got a Cintiq in like 2014 or 2015, and it completely changed the way I work. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can zoom in on how I'm working. And so that has changed a lot, like people using the iPad. And then that has also changed the way letters and illustrators are on social media. I think social media has really influenced lettering styles and the industry itself. I mean, so all of social media has changed so much over the past 10 years. And I think like I can't post the way I used to. I mean, I can. I don't know why. No one's preventing me, but it's just not the same of like posting a silly little sketch and being like work in progress. There's no work in progress anymore. And if it is, it's like a perfect time lapse start to finish. And it's just there's no nuance to social media anymore. There's no like kind of watching a real life situation play out with progress and illustration and lettering. It's just like so polished. And I think that prevents people from posting little illustrations for fun and just to put it out there, because it's just changed so much and it's just people expect different things, or they just won't even see it. If it's like a pencil drawing on paper, the algorithm is like, okay, that's garbage, obviously. Like, no, we're gonna send that way to the back. So it works against you. And it's just, I think we're missing the rawness, I guess, not to get too deep about it, but and I think that changes the attitude of letterers and illustrators and designers.
Everybody feels a little bit like social media, the threshold has just been raised so much. We talk about authenticity with social media a lot, like you hear that word, and then it does feel a little bit performative because there's just such a high bar of like what can get published and what gets reactions and things like that. On that note, of social media and things like that, how do you see culture shaping your work? How do you hope your work influences culture back?
Well, I think since 2015, the culture in the world has changed, particularly the US, or in my experience, obviously, being a US citizen. And I use art to be reactionary to the news, and that amped up how I would post and how I would express my art on social media through some sort of protest. And I think a lot of people, like, that is an opportunity to share your voice and your work at the same time. And that is something that has changed a lot in the past 10 years with how people post, what people post about. And, the news can just be so bleak. It's really hard to picture the future of social media and the future of how we share each other's work. And it is, I don't know, it's scary because I think community is really important among artists. I guess like living in rural Vermont now, there's not as much creative community here, I guess. I mean, there's like creatives, but not the same in the city where it's more condensed. But online, I mean, really, it doesn't even matter anymore because it feels like the lettering and illustration community is just online. I don't know. It just makes it so difficult to not be reactionary to the news around you. And people say online, like, if you're not posting about that, then I don't trust you. And that's hard. And it's like some artists aren't as comfortable sharing political views and stuff. And what I've said before is like, you don't necessarily need to use the language that other people are using. You can put out other ways to voice your opinion, like when the national parks were defunded and all those firings took place. I made a little thing about save our parks, but like if you were to post something about take a hike in a national park today, like that's not political. Or like what's going on lately, post how much you just like post a ballroom exploding. I'm just kidding. Like post a ballroom on fire. I don't know. That's not necessarily political at all. It makes what we do sometimes feel trivial, and that's always been the case, I think. I mean, I know a lot of people like in college, I remember kind of thinking like, oh yeah, my brother's in med school and I'm at art school, and there's just that like, oh, okay, that's not a real career. I'm sure that's what people think. I don't think that, but people have that. But like, so times like this, when it's just like you want to post your illustration for a birthday card, and suddenly it doesn't feel like the right time to celebrate how cute my little frog wearing a birthday hat is. Even though it's like, I want to see that. Show me your frogs and birthday hats. It doesn't always need to be like, but I don't know. It's like, I was about to say, like, doesn't always need to be about like, I don't know, end war. It's just like, okay, well, it kind of should, I think. It's just a battle against like what the world is up to and what we do for a living when it comes to social media. We're not in a real battle whatsoever. I think we're fine. But yeah, and just like since COVID, so much has changed too. Like, I don't know. It's hard to think about the future of our culture.
So much of our lives are now ingested through a screen, or like so much information that we're at this frontier where we're like realizing that we're all part of this news cycle, and in a lot of ways like a rage cycle, I think, where we're sort of becoming aware of our own involvement in that or lack of involvement in it, and it's like this sort of this choice we have to dance around or kind of figure out for ourselves. And I think you're right. Like, I think artists in particular are scrutinized for their every expression of that in a lot of ways. So I'm glad you said that, because I think that would resonate with a lot of folks. I think everybody's feeling that. So I'm glad you said that. It's tough. You got to pick your balance.
Yes.
You got to protect your energy too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Are there any practices or tools that you recommend for artists to absorb cultural influences in a good way without losing their own voice in the process?
I don't know, because it's like I see myself posting a lot less because of all those reasons. So I'm not necessarily overcoming it. I think the last time I posted, which at this point was weeks ago, which is really rare for me, I posted best I can do is flowers. And it was kind of based on an internet meme. Best I can do. What is that from?
It's like a pawn shop show, right?
Yes, that's right. Oh my God, I went to that pawn shop. Pawn
No,
Stars.
really? You did?
Yes,
I love
when
it.
that show was on, and I am not a reality show person at all, nothing against it, but for some reason I was really into Pawn Stars. It was like a gritty antique roadshow sort of. I like seeing how much things are worth. People talking about it. Yeah, when I moved to Portland on the road trip there, I stopped and stayed at a family friend's house in Las Vegas, which is where that Pawn Star is. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're in Vegas. Let's go to the Pawn Stars pawn store. So we went in there and I took a picture with, I think the guy that's dead now. I don't remember his name. Anyway, so yeah, it's from that. Best I can do is flowers. So I was just like, because my go-to doodling thing, let's see, it's either like a bow or flowers. So whenever I'm drawing and like kind of not inspired to do anything, I do flowers. So I thought best I can do is flowers. And it's also just like in this climate, like this political climate, best I can offer you is flowers. And maybe if you have that approach, just like, look, just want to share this fun little frog with a birthday hat on, then just go for it and not care. The only thing is I don't have tools for beating the algorithm. Like the one thing that I posted that went viral is my duck animation. I animated a duck wearing a balaclava, kind of bouncing to ODB, and that one went viral. But yeah, like videos do better, they say. Your faces do better, which is why everyone is like, come letter a thing with me. And it's like face, drawing, face. But I have also been trying to be more analog and not on the phone as a tool to kind of work around what's going on. I mean, living in Vermont, there is something you're detached from the news a little bit more around here. Sometimes it has a vibe of being really far apart from what's going on in the world. But I've been oil painting now that I have my barn. I have my art studio here, and painting and not looking at any screens and working with color and working with paint has really been quite healing. And I really recommend, maybe going back to the scanner, maybe going back to pencil and paper. Maybe our next wave of social media is in person somehow. How can we do that? Everyone moved to my compound in Vermont.
I mean, I'll accept the invitation.
Yeah, Pulse are the new social media. Kidding.
I think it's interesting though, because maybe, to your point, it's not necessarily about absorbing cultural influences all the time. Maybe it's about turning inward in a time like right now, especially where we're just inundated with like all this information and the news cycle and the outrage and all that, and sort of taking space from that cycle. And like, I wonder too, if, to your point, maybe new subcultures kind of originate from that. And so we're sort of creating versus reflecting that information.
Mm-hmm.
If someone was struggling to find their voice in illustration or lettering, what's the single most useful exercise or mindset shift that you'd recommend? Whenever
I feel lost with style, which feels like it's so crucial to find your niche, and it is important because that's kind of what drives your style, what drives the kind of work you get, right? Like if you want children's book illustration work, then you're going to be looking at different stuff than someone who wants to do logo mark lettering or something more like that. So it's really important to know what interests you and what inspires you. I think gathering the artists you like, exploring the artists that they like, and finding those pieces. It's almost like using Pinterest, a mood board, to create something so you can really look at it, and then you're not obsessing over one piece of someone's work, like if only I could create this one thing, you kind of have a more pushed out view of what you like and what's going to make you. So if you have that in your head, then you have like all this inspiration to pull from, and then it's doing it. So then you want to try matching what inspires you to how you actually create. And you can look at the kind of, I mean, there's so many Skillshare classes, YouTube videos. I think a lot of people have found it helpful to follow along a class or attend a workshop or something, but something that gives you the brief, because that's a big part of what our job is it's not necessarily just like, today let me come up with a different example than a frog in a birthday hat. A snail in a construction hat, if you want to draw that. But if you create a project around it, like a snail in a construction hat for a logo or something, then you have something more to focus on, to like build around. Keep that mood board in mind, keep your vision in mind, and explore ways of creating, working on paper. Don't always rush right into the computer. I think I couldn't imagine starting out not using pen and paper. Like I do a lot of my sketches all in Cintiq now, and do an entire project start to finish, not even hardly touching paper, other than notes. I'm not good at notes taking on computers. And just keep exploring different ways to make stuff. But it's definitely like keeping curious. You want to stay curious about all the different techniques and what you can do. And like, especially when you're starting out, this is your chance to kind of like try all the things to figure out what you're good at.
Love that. If you're enjoying this podcast, you might also love exploring millions of beautiful icons and photos at nounproject.com. Our community of designers and photographers from over 120 countries is building the most diverse and extensive collection of icons and photos ever created. Since 2010, Noun Project has been the go-to choice for the world's top brands and best designers. Check us out free today at nounproject.com. I'm curious about the business side of things too. Pricing and contracts have always been tricky in illustration. What do you wish that emerging freelancers knew about valuing their work now?
It's so hard. And I could say, oh, a book cover should always be this, but it's just never the case. Book covers are actually probably a bad example because they tend to stay in a certain range. But like I get quotes for a book cover and I'm like, that's way too low. So there should be standards, but it's kind of hard, and it's our job to set those standards. So it is, when someone goes way under budget, it is only hurting the rest of the industry, because sometimes it's just like they have another $1,500, just like $3,000 for a book cover. That's fine. But like anything below that is like, really? Come on. Right? And I wish there was like a mathematical equation I could give you. Some people do work hourly rates. I don't. But you can sort of be like, okay, well, if I kind of want, let's say, $100 an hour, like how can I price that way? So it's not necessarily like you telling your client, like, I'm $100 an hour. You just like pricing it like that. And that can work out in your favor. But sometimes pricing out hourly can actually work against you, depending on the project. But I think the important thing to realize when you're putting estimates together for clients is go a little above and beyond. Particularly when you're starting out, have a base, almost a presentation. You can make it geared towards that client. So sometimes what I do is I will have a presentation deck for my estimate, and I'll have an opening spread with an image of my work that sort of feels like it could match the vibe of the project that I'm proposing, and an intro saying like, I'm, Mary Kate McDevitt. My colorful approach to lettering is going to be great for this t-shirt campaign because it's about love and happiness. Seems like a good fit, right? So I already put it in their head. I'm a good fit because of this. And then show some other work examples that could also sort of make them feel like, okay, they've drawn things like this before, because it's amazing how, literal clients can be. Maybe it's not always the art director, but it's not always the art director who's making the final choice about who they hire. So it could be some marketing person that has to chime in about who's doing this, especially for bigger projects. So have some examples of your work and then go through options of pricing. So options of the amount of revisions, options of the amount of sketches. So all of these are ways you can add money. So if you say like, for this project, if I give you just one sketch, minimal rounds of revisions, I can do it for this amount. But that means you don't get much more feedback. And if there are more revisions than what we addressed in the scope, then it will be X amount of dollars more per revision, per whatever. And then also always have a clause about a change in the scope of work. If someone comes back with like a new headline that they want to squeeze in, you like make sure that there's like additional changes to the original scope of the work will result in the change in the fee. And then if they see that, sometimes they'll be like, okay, well, we don't know what we're going to be up against, so we'll go with the big the 3 sketches or 3 or 4 sketches or whatever, however many you want to go up to, with the multiple revisions, with the, so then it's all looked in. And then there's another range of how you can get more money is through usage. So is it for a magazine? Magazines, editorial work is way more straightforward in terms of pricing, especially, nowadays. I don't think they're really upping their budgets that much. And the usage is clear. It's for that one time only. You retain the copyright, all that. That's pretty straightforward. Book covers, similarly, it depends on how many eyeballs are on it. If it's going to go through reprint, you can get more money. If it gets translated into a different language, any little thing that you can kind of put on a worth amount on your work or on your efforts is a way to basically explain to the client, all of this are the factors of what my value is. And the more you put out there like that, the more they can see like, oh, okay, if there's like a point system. So it is almost more like revisions cost this costs this costs this. And if they see it a little bit more like that, where they feel like they can make adjustments rather than just throwing out one lump number, that they're more comfortable with that. And I like the idea of a kind of a presentation just to solidify the value that you're going to bring. And if it's against other artists, and let's say another artist gave an estimate that, looks like an invoice, then they forgot what that artist looks like or the artist's work looks like. So it's helpful to do that. And, even InDesign or probably Canva, has templates for this sort of thing. Like you can use something templated if you're not comfortable with designing a whole thing start to finish. And just make it clear. It doesn't need to be super fancy or anything, but it's very helpful to have.
That's beautiful advice. And I think thinking sort of holistically about it before you get yourself into a situation where scope creep is an issue, I think that's fantastic advice. So Love that. Mary Kate, you've worked with some big brands, names like Target, Nike, Nintendo, Panera. Take us into those conversations for a minute. How did you come into those types of opportunities? What's it like navigating bigger clients?
So all of those clients came to me organically, and sometimes sometimes they will say, but most of the time, no one tells me where they found my work or anything. So So they approached me. And with the Nike job, I've only worked with them twice, to be fair. They're not a regular client, but it was such an easy project because they were great to work with. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, I just pulled something out of thin air. I did t-shirts with them, and I work with them the same as I would work with editorial clients, which this was a project I did probably almost 10 years ago. And I don't remember how we negotiated price, because it is still something that I'm not great at negotiating. And it can be daunting when it's a bigger client. So I'm pretty sure they gave me a budget, which is always great. If they come in with a number, then you can say, okay, I can work with that range. And then you can always say different things about, timing. Timing is another thing that you can add to that proposal. And so, I just, sent 3 pencil sketches. They chose one to go to final. I inked it up. We worked with color, and it was done. And it's some of those projects, can be just as simple as a regular editorial project or something, in and out. Target, similarly, I've done a lot of gift cards. I've worked with them so many times on those. So it's like so straightforward, and they're so easy to work with too. I mean, that's the thing about sometimes bigger, I guess, like Target in particular, their creative team, they're very creative, and they're very good at communicating with creatives, where some advertising agencies or some bigger agencies like that, communication can be difficult because there's like 10 people on these emails and it can get complicated. And in that way, just, I don't know, I always like to be like the weird artist weirdo in the group of on those meetings where I have, like, I don't know, maybe I'll be in a barn and they're like in business casual and I'm just there I'm the one who draws, and I like that title. I just like wearing that and being like, I don't need to have the lingo that these people have. That's not my job. I worked with Target on some packaging stuff, which was fun, and that's a bigger project. So that's a bigger team, but yeah, they're really great to work with. And so I think it's just like, you don't need to put on any airs, I guess, when you're working with any client. If anything, I think they want to hire the creative person who has business acumen, but not, it's not any different than any other client, is kind of how I would approach it, but ask for more money.
It sounds intimidating, but I like that you're kind of approaching it with like, this is my jam and I'm here to draw for you. What's one rule about creativity or design that you've completely broken and think more people should ignore?
Oh, all the rules I break. I'm such a rule breaker. I'm so bad.
You are in a barn.
Yeah, exactly. I would say, like, secretly, I feel like maybe it's imposter syndrome, whatever. It's just like, I don't know, maybe never knowing what the hell I'm doing and then being here anyway is kind of what my honest answer is like, I don't know, that you guys are still believing that I know what I'm doing is probably. I mean, that is important to know, I guess. But I often feel like I'm a chicken with their head cut off. Like, I say a simple project, but there's always panic before it. And there's like doubting yourself. So I think any artist can relate to that, having doubts about your work and then doing it anyway. So I guess it's like, you're not supposed to doubt your work. You're supposed to be super confident, and you're supposed to have everything figured out. And you look at a blank page and be like, I know exactly what I'm going to put down here. That's the impression I think a lot of us feel. And the honest truth is that that just doesn't exist, and we don't need to have that pressure on ourselves. But we do anyway. I say that and I'm just like, I'm about to start a project today after our talk, and I'm like, oh, where do I begin?
Personally, one of the things that I've grown to love is to walk into a room and just be like, is anybody else totally winging it in life? And then every single person's like, yes, like, oh my God,
Yes.
yeah, I feel seen. So like, I think there's something really beautiful about, just sort of owning that and then starting from that place of like humility, or I guess, the blank piece of paper where you're like, this doesn't have to be a thing that I have figured out. I'm not strategizing anything, I'm figuring it out. So if you could influence the future of illustration, say 5 or 10 years from now, what do you hope it looks like?
Well, I'm always so excited to see what the future of illustration is like, and the fact that it changes. I'm curious to see maybe a return to using more analog materials that I also hope to start doing more myself. So I would hope that would be great if I had some influence on that. Influence on color. I love color. So I would really hope to see in 5 to 10 years people being inspired by any of my color palettes or any colors that they see out in the world that they want to recreate. I guess I would hope to see really fun lettering styles that are way different. Some lettering styles that are almost hard to read and colorful. I like a lot of colors. I like a lot of shapes. I like things that are shapely, have interesting shapes. I hope it's good. If it's all bad and I had any influence on that, I'm going to be really disappointed.
I'll be disappointed too. No. I just wanted to say too, I think we've gone almost an hour into this conversation and AI hasn't come up, and I love that we're talking about back to pen and paper, because I don't think you're the only person, at least I know I feel this way too, where I want to see something real, even if it sucks. Like, I want to see the real images. I don't want to see something that's been generated all the time. And so I think you saying that is like it's sort of like, well, she's at the front. I hope we see this coming out more, because it's nice to see when people make something with their hands.
Yes, it is. I mean, yeah, I avoid talking about AI. I'm glad that it came up this way, because it is something that needs to be talked about. Like, I am going to be teaching next semester at my alma mater, Tyler School of Art. I think the last time I taught there was 2018. So it's been a minute. And in the questionnaire, about kind of like the school questionnaire that they probably ask all their teachers, but it talked about how will you use AI in the classroom? And I'm like, AI in the classroom, excuse me? And my answer was basically like, I'm not going to be using AI. I'm not going to have the students use AI in any way. If they already use it in their, like, I know a lot of people use it for their kind of scheduling or that kind of thing, or note taking or whatever. If they want to use it like that in their basic organization process, that's fine. And I don't know how I'd really prevent it. I know I can see it if someone were to send me an AI image, because I can spot them pretty easily, although it's becoming harder. But I'm like, really? People like AI? I don't get it. I think it's boring. I think it's sloppy. It's unimaginative. It's brain goop. And obviously, there's the millions of super positive uses for it. Absolutely. But don't draw for me, or don't, yeah, it's sad. So it's no coincidence that I'm painting right now. Every time I get into a painting mode, something terrible has happened. I mean, because after Trump was elected, the first time I started oil painting again after I hadn't since art school. And I painted during COVID, and now I'm painting because for positive things, because I have a barn to paint in. And it's my, like, I'm living my life here in the best way. It's great. So that is also, but like, yeah, the AI, it's just like when people talk about it, I'm just like, let me have 0 screens and let me throw my phone into the lake kind of feeling.
There's this sense of luxury, I think, in parting ways from screens at this point, where we haven't realized how much we traded away. You know what I mean? And I think, to your point, getting back into a room with a paintbrush and a canvas and just being alone with that, where you're not getting alerts and all those things, I think there's something that's very like wealthy almost about it, like spiritually, or we've sort of become time poor and spiritually poor by these devices and using them to be creative for us instead of just doing it on our own and being okay with what comes out of the paintbrush.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know how creatives can use AI and face their own work, because to me, I just don't understand. But yeah, and it's just like there is something so nice also about painting when you're not thinking. You're like, I mean, all you're thinking is in terms of color, value, and tone, and capturing angles. And it's just, you do get into just the meditative state of just trying to translate the image you're looking at effectively onto the canvas. And it just feels so good to have, like, especially when something clicks, suddenly it looks like it's lit up. I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's it. And then that's a great feeling. And you're focusing on skills, you're focusing on working with color, and working with drawing is obviously what we do all the time. So it's great to investigate that in other ways, in other mediums and techniques.
Mm. Mary Kate, where can listeners follow along with your story if they want to learn more about you?
Well, Instagram, as much as I do not post as much anymore, at Mary Kate McDevitt. My website, which I desperately need to update, is marykatemcdevitt.com. And I'm on Threads at Mary Kate McDevitt. And you can follow along the barn at Dense Valley Fog, or Dense Valley Barn. Dense Valley Fog is the band the barn is based off of, which is my husband's band and my neighbor. Anyway, Dense Valley Barn is where I'm going to post pictures of the barn and stuff, and probably my paintings.
Love it. Thank you so much for coming on the chat.
I had such a great time chatting with you, Nick. Thank you so much.
The feeling is mutual. Appreciate it. That's all for today. Thanks to Mary Kate McDevitt for taking the time to share her story, and thanks to you for listening in. We'll see you next time on Design Icons.